Someone took it all away from you once too, didn't they, Bats? And look what you became, an all-punching, all-kicking little ball of angst. What do you think Superman will become? What will he turn into? Today on the Comic Book Report, Injustice Volume 1 by Tom Taylor. Stick around and check it out. Greetings all, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I've got a real special treat for you. That's right, we're starting out Tom Taylor's Injustice. That's right folks, it's more than just a video game, and if you've never read the comics, you are missing out. So sit back, relax, and let's go ahead and get started with today's review. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written by Tom Taylor and penciled primarily by Jeremy Rappak. The issues in this volume were published by DC Comics beginning in 2013. The volume itself collects Injustice issues 1 through 6, and finally, this standard size hardcover comes in at 192 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a quick spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our first look at that standard size hardcover from DC Comics. So this collects the first 6 issues of the Injustice series from Tom Taylor. And honestly, it's a really nice little hardcover. There is no slipcase dust jacket over the top of it, it's just the hardback book itself, but I really like it. You get some great art throughout the cover here. The front cover is modeled a bit after the video game, where the back cover is more the comic book art you can expect on the interior. Since the time of publication, these have also been released in other formats, including 2 omnibuses, which I do not possess, but I've heard really great things about. And after we go ahead and finish up our look at the cover and exterior of this book, I'll do a quick flip in to just let you guys see the kind of binding you can expect if you pick up this volume itself. Nothing too crazy here, folks. It's a smaller collection. The binding is good. Might be a little bit of gutter loss in this collection, but nothing too bad, at least in my opinion. Overall, a really nice made little standard size hardcover collection. Okay, and with that taken care of, we can dive into the collection itself. Just to provide a little bit more context for this collection here, this is all very associated with the Injustice Gods Among Us video game series. I know there's been 2 video games, and this comic series basically serves as a prequel that kind of leads into the events of the game. We start with kind of the same origin of what kicks off the sort of Injustice universe. Now, for those that don't know, this isn't part of the standard mainstream DC continuity and mythos. This is kind of its own separate, maybe part in the multiverse, separate continuity, but it's still a very fantastic story. And I haven't even finished out the full run of Tom Taylor's work on Injustice, but I do like the beginnings we get here in this collection. As a baseline bird's eye overview of the Injustice universe, essentially it's in a kind of dystopian present and slight future for the DC universe, where Superman has kind of become a totalitarian global dictator, and he has some of the heroes and villains aligned with him, and Batman forms kind of a guerrilla rebellion group that's trying to topple the regime of Superman, and he has various heroes and villains on his side as well. For my money, it's one of my favorite Superman Goes Darkseid stories. I really enjoy it, and I think that the origin of it is truly heartbreaking, but also masterfully crafted. And you see that within this comic book here. Essentially what kickstarts this whole Injustice world is Joker shows up in Metropolis trying to dismantle and tear things apart effectively, and he basically concocts this gas with Scarecrow, I believe, that Superman is exposed to. Superman's trying to stop the Joker, and all of these kind of crazy hijinks ensue, and Superman, in the climax of this battle, sees Doomsday, one of his ultimate opponents, and he believes the only way to stop Doomsday is to fly him out into outer space and beat him up. The wrinkle is, of course, that Doomsday is not really Doomsday. He is kind of a hallucination that Superman experiences under the toxins effects, and it's actually his wife, Lois Lane, who is pregnant with their unborn child, which he just found out earlier in the the issue. While she's in space, she of course is dying of suffocation out in space, along with their unborn child. And to top it all off, the Joker put a bomb that was attached to her heart beating, so as soon as she dies while Superman is in space and can do nothing about it, a bomb detonates and destroys all of Metropolis. So in one foul swoop, in one moment in time, Superman has lost the love of his life, his unborn child, and the city he's sworn to protect. So much of his identity, so much of who he is, his purpose, his mission, his heart, was just taken away in one moment by the Joker. Shortly after this happens, Batman subdues the Joker, and he is unbelievably upset and cannot understand why Joker did this. And Joker's basically like, hey, I'm Joker, I wanted to see what happens. We know that you lost everything and you became this Batman. What do you think Superman is going to become? And Batman basically says you can't corrupt Superman. He's like, the Boy Scout. He's above reproach. He's better than this. However, much to the surprise and horror of Batman, Superman shows up, grabs the Joker, and puts his hand straight through Joker's beating heart and murders the Joker. From that point, basically Superman plays superhero to the whole world. He starts toppling dictatorships and just eliminating people or rulers or things in the world that he believes are not right. He kind of says, hey, I have the power to do all this, and now after all I've lost, I'm not going to let anything like this ever happen again. I'm going to assume control of the planet Earth, basically. Batman is, of course, not okay with this, the kind of murders he's willing to justify, and just the way he's taking control and eliminating choice. So they kind of come to a head throughout some of these issues, but along the way, both sides that kind of start to develop, the pro-Superman and anti-Superman factions start to show up. We have Wonder Woman siding with Superman. We have, people like Green Arrow and stuff siding with Batman. And interestingly enough, we also have some villains kind of on both sides. But already we kind of begin to see the culmination of the Injustice universe. We see Superman kind of taking control, addressing the world. He outs himself as Clark Kent and basically assumes control. Batman, at the end of this whole little book here, decides to create sort of the resistance. And that's kind of where this book leaves off. And of course, it keeps building into what ultimately becomes the Injustice video game and world and how they stop him. And anyway, this was kind of the opening chapter, and I think it was done absolutely effectively. Another issue or moment in time in this collection that I wanted to point out, because it's pretty significant for the overall arc of Injustice and it really sets up some events to come, is the issue that deals with the murder of Dick Grayson, who is of course Nightwing, at the hands of Damian Wayne Robin. This is a really fracturing moment for Batman and Superman. They're already tense and the conflict is already building between Batman and Superman, but this is really a key moment where the side and the line is very clearly defined and drawn. Damian's kind of pragmatic, utilitarian view of the world has him alive very swiftly with Superman, even though his father is against Superman's overall kind of plan. And of course we have Dick Grayson, Nightwing, who's always kind of this lovable unifier, this kind of comic relief, this sense of levity in a very dark place. He's also a very good middle ground between Batman and Superman, and he's just a focal character that everyone sort of seems to love. And he is sort of inadvertently murdered. Damian, out of a fit of anger, throws one of the little sticks or billy club-like things, hits Nightwing, kind of knocks him off balance. He falls over and hits like a piece of rock or debris, and it kills him. He snaps his neck and he dies. And this just sends everything over the edge. Superman kind of takes in Damian, saying, hey, it's not your fault, it's going to be okay. And Batman just wants to have nothing to do with any of this. He picks up Dick Grayson and basically says, my son's been murdered, and it's all kind of because of all this conflict. And that really, sets the tone moving forward. And I think losing Dick Grayson was also a really big fracturing point between these heroes. I think overall, one of the things I really love about the Injustice universe is because it's not bound by the mainstream DC continuity, they can really take a lot of bigger swings. You get a lot of different character development. You can, kill people or bring people back sort of at will. I feel as though there's a level of blank canvas quality to this, and I think because of that, Tom Taylor is really able to take some, bigger moves. We get to see some different kind of portrayals of some of these heroes that we would never see in the mainstream DC comic continuity. I think overall the art quality throughout this volume is pretty strong. I think that there are some aspects of the art that are maybe a little more cartoony than I would like, but it's definitely not something you see all the way through, and there is just some beautifully detailed art I see within this collection as well. Writing-wise, this is actually my first introduction to Tom Taylor. Since then, I've read him in things like DCeased, and of course his Nightwing run, which I'm currently reading and loving. I've reviewed both the first DCeased volume and the first couple volumes of his Nightwing series on this channel, but I'm really starting to like Tom Taylor. I know he's a really big favorite right now with a lot of people, and I absolutely see why. But I think that I got my start with him here in the pages of Injustice, and I think from the very beginning, I really liked what this writer brought to the table. Even with a pretty fantastical storyline where these characters are bent in ways that they maybe never would be in the mainstream continuity, as I mentioned earlier, they still really have their distinct sense of voice, character voice. They feel authentically real for these characters. Granted, Superman is pushed beyond a breaking point we ever would have seen, so maybe his is a little, suspension of disbeliefy, but overall, these feel like these characters. I believe a lot of the behaviors given these situations for these characters. I love that a lot of the characters as well feel very distinct when they're written. It doesn't feel like I'm just reading the same person, just with different faces, and that's something that I think Tom Taylor does really well. I also think his sense of world building is quite good. Similarly in DCeased, where it's kind of the DC Zombies book, we get to see what happens where he just gets to play in the sandbox of the DC universe and break whatever he wants with no real repercussions, because these are sort of dystopian universe tales. And I think he does super well with that brush. And now as we make our way to the end of this collection, all that's left to do is to give Injustice a grade. For kicking off one of the most exciting what-if comic book universes I have ever seen. With a clear sense of narrative and strong character voice, The Comic Book Report is happy to give Injustice Volume 1 by Tom Taylor a B+. This is definitely an above-average comic book read for me. For fans of Tom Taylor, this is an absolute must, and I think for fans of the DC Universe as a whole, this is a read you should definitely pick up. I will say for this collection itself, the art is sometimes a little too cartoony for my liking, but strong in other portions. Another thing to note is that this is just the beginning of a much larger narrative in this dystopian DC universe. So I know for me, this collection definitely left me wanting more. If you've read Injustice, let me know in the comments below, and thank you so much for watching The Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave your comments, subscribe to my channel, and maybe check out some of my other videos. And until next time, have a good one.